Hello, my name is Robert Dean Steele, and this is your daily Bible class. Well, we've been going through the book of 1 Peter. We're in chapter 3. We're looking at verses 1 right through, and now let me grab this other piece here, and to verse number 7. It goes like this. Wives, in the same way, submit yourselves to your own husband, so if any of them do not believe the word, they may be won without words by the behavior of their wives. So here is Peter. Now, folks, I know we live in the 21st century. Way back in the 1960s, there was a movement called the feminist movement. And it has had a tremendous effect on men and women. And the thought of submission to a man, I tell you, all kinds of controversy. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to submit to any man. We're not talking about letting the man lord it over. What we're talking about is yielding your will to that individual. You say that man isn't worth it. You know, folks, it has nothing to do with the character of the man. It has to do with the office of the man. By simply saying, you know what? I am going to be a godly woman. Because what he's talking about here is through your character, through your willingness to, basically say, you know what? I am going to love you. I'm going to honor you as my husband. You know what he's saying? By doing that, you will win that individual out. Because what he's going to see is he's going to see a godly example. And no matter what he does, you are going to love him. No matter what he does, you're going to sit there and say, I am going to honor you. And basically what he's saying is you are being a godly example to him. And when they see the purity and reverence of your life, and that's what he's talking about, the purity and the reverence of your life, they're seeing Jesus Christ being lived out through you. I tell you something, they will have nothing to say. They won't be able to say, well, you're this way or that way. No, you are a living example of purity and reverence to God. He says, when they see that, your beauty will come not with the outward adornment, such as elaborate hairstyles and wearing of gold and jewelry and fine clothes. He says, listen, they're not going to be won over by all the baubles and by your hairstyle and all of those things. He says, listen, there's something greater than the outward appearance. So many people focus on the outward appearance. I mean, magazines are everywhere, and they talk about Angelina Jolie or, Jennifer Aniston or whoever it may be, Kate Middleton. She's wearing just the right kind of dress, and her hairstyle is just this way, and she's just keeping her weight down. You can have the hot body and all that sort of situation. It's not the outward sign. You see, folks, outward beauty does fade. I don't care how old you are. Sooner or later, gravity works against you. You get wrinkles and that sort of thing. You say, well, I'll put on Botox and I'll get, this sort of thing. Folks, let me tell you something. Beauty is not on the outside. Beauty is on the inside. He says, rather, it should be your inner self, the unfading beauty of that gentle and quiet spirit, which is of great worth in God's sight. God is looking at you, and he says true beauty is found on the inside out. Years ago, I met a wonderful woman of God. It was Ruth Bailey, and she at the time was the husband of Gordon Bailey, and they were pastors in Yellowknife where I was. I was just a young guy, 28, 29 years old. She was in her 80s. But you know what? She had a beauty, and that beauty had to do with her demeanor. It had to do with how that she loved the homeless people of Yellowknife. And she was in every which way a Mother Teresa. She had a beauty, and so did her husband, Gordon. Those folks were examples of what God really wants people to be like. And I loved her attitude towards her husband and his attitude. They used to call each other Beauty. And he would say, she's my sweetie, and she'd call him his. It was wonderful. You'd see them just how they loved each other. And it was all because of the great work that she had in the Lord. He says, for this way, the holy women of the past put their hope in God to adorn themselves. He was talking, for example, of Sarah. He says, who submitted themselves to their husbands, who obeyed Abraham and called him Lord. You see, Sarah Even though she was a great woman, a very beautiful woman, she submitted herself to her husband. Her husband came home and said, honey, I just had an experience with God, and he's called to me to go to the Ur of the Chaldees. She could have said, what? I'm not, or I'm called to Canaan. What? I'm not leaving Ur, and I'm not going to that place. She said, wherever you go, I'm going to go. You know what? That's what Ruth said. Ruth said, I will go where you go. I will follow you. Your God will be my God. Now, she said it to Naomi, but that was the beginning of a great adventure for Ruth. Ruth later became the wife of Boaz, and they had wonderful children, and the grandchildren, the great-grandchildren of their union was David, and then ultimately Jesus Christ. So in the same way, when we submit ourselves to God, ladies especially, you know what happens? You have no idea what God could do through that situation. He says basically this: you are his daughters if you do what is right and do not give away to fear. You know, it's fear that causes us to turn away from the things of God. I'm not going to trust God. God doesn't really know what he's doing. But when we put our trust in God, no matter what situation we find ourselves in, you know, God is in control. You say, but I'm a lady and I don't want to submit to any man. Guess what? If you don't submit to any man, you're not going to submit to God. And that is so absolutely true. As a man is called to submit to the Lord, men are called to love their wives as Christ loved the church. And I want to tell you something. When a man loves God, a woman will gladly follow him because she sees the character of God in that man's life. And so it's what he's simply saying is, willing submission has its rewards when we follow the Lord's plan and purpose. My name is Robert Dean Steele. You have yourself a great and godly day. This is your daily Bible class.